Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. We have a special guest with us in the studio today. We're here with Jack Parker. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You bet. You're out on tour with Chris Tomlin playing guitar.
Yes, I am. We're doing a little Christmas tour here, so it's about 10 dates, and I just came in from Alabama last night. And It's going really well, yeah.
That's great. How long have you been out for?
This run, we've done about 4 dates already, so there's 6 more, and it'll wrap about mid-December, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Nice. Nice to do a smaller tour where you can kind of get out and enjoy it and not be out for a year at a time or 2 years at a time.
Yeah, this is great. We just kind of do about 5 shows, take a 3 or 4 day break, and then come and do the last 5 shows. So it's a really quick jaunt.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. This is actually, you played with Chris Tomlin before, more toward the beginning of his career, didn't you?
Yes, I used to travel with him in the late 90s and early 2000s, and a lot of that was just me and him going out and doing events. His band guys had other jobs at that point, and so yeah, we'd just kind of travel around, and I would take an acoustic guitar or a djembe, or we'd go over to the bass player's house and I'd borrow his bass, and I'd just kind of play whatever was needed for that song. So yeah, we've been at it a while.
Right, right. Now around that time, mid-90s, was when you were part of the founding of David Crowder Band.
Yes.
So were you doing the two simultaneously?
I was. David had just started a church there in town with a buddy of his, and we were writing songs for the church, just kind of songs we thought our peers might like to listen to, and recorded them, and those songs, kind of got outside the walls of the church, and it started becoming more of a traveling band thing. We were still there at the church doing the worship band. So David Crowder Band was basically the worship band at the church, and then we started traveling around once these songs got out, and then I was traveling with Chris at that point, and they both got just so busy there was no way to
couldn't do both.
Couldn't do both.
Right.
Yeah, and I had known David a long time, and we'd always talked about doing music and traveling, so I kind of felt like, well, kind of felt like a little more of a commitment to him. So, but I loved traveling with Chris, and it was a tough decision for sure.
Sure, but now you come back around full circle.
It's come full circle, so happy reunion.
Yeah, right on. So it was interesting to me to check out a bit of your history. You didn't intend to be a musician originally, did you?
No, I went to college to study accounting, and my dad was an accountant, so I just figured I'll go to the same college he went to, and I'll be an accountant as well. And so about my senior year in college, all these opportunities started opening up to play guitar for different things. And, Louis Giglio, who does the Passion Conferences and has 6 Steps Records, he was there in Waco at that time as well. And I had connected with him and was playing for a Bible study. He did like 1,500 college students every Monday. And
wow.
Was traveling a little with Chris, and the Crowder thing was starting to take off, and so it was like, this is really strange, I'm doing a lot of music, and my passion for accounting started to diminish a little bit at that point.
Right.
Interestingly enough, and the guy that was the worship leader at the Bible study Louis was leading was like, hey, what are you doing when you graduate college? I'm like, I'm gonna go get an accounting job, I guess, go into the business world. And he's like, you can always do that. How about you take a year off, travel with me, we'll do music, and then at the end of the year, go get an accounting job. And that was 20 years ago that I was supposed to have gotten an accounting job.
Right,
and so
right.
Here I sit now.
That's awesome. But you can still do that if you want to.
I think so. I might have to brush up on my skills a little bit after 20 years, but.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you actually started out on piano, is that correct, originally?
Yeah, I started taking piano lessons probably 12, 13 years old, and did that for a couple of years, and we moved away to a different city, and I lost my piano teacher, and then the place I was, South Padre Island, we moved to South Padre Island, so there wasn't like a huge music scene there in Texas,
right.
A little beach town, and so I just kind of picked up guitar, and it kind of made sense because I knew a little bit about music theory and the way the piano was laid out and what chords kind of go with what songs. So when I picked up the guitar, it kind of made sense, what goes where. And so I just kind of started messing with that a little bit and just did it as a hobby.
Right. Are you entirely self-taught on guitar?
Yeah, a lot of it was just kind of listening to the music that I loved and trying to pick it out and trying to figure out, oh, you know, I kind of know power chords and stuff, so that helped me a lot, and just tried to emulate kind of what the guys were doing, you know, in the bands that I loved to listen to.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. What kind of things were you listening to in those days?
A lot of classic rock. My parents kind of raised me on the, you know, the Jimi Hendrix, the Led Zeppelin, and that stuff. And then they also liked folk music, like James Taylor, Crosby, Stills and Nash, and Neil Young, and all that. So I was kind of, you know, influenced by those artists, learning chords and stuff. And then my mind was completely blown the first time I heard this guitarist named Michael Hedges.
Oh, sure.
And he was doing all these open tunings and crazy tapping and all this, and I'd heard the music first, and I was like, oh, I like this band. You know, I can hear a rhythm guitarist, and I can hear a lead guy, and I can hear, you know, kind of a bass thing happening. And when I saw it on a video, he had this thing called a harp guitar, which is a guitar, and then there's bass strings. So he's playing bass lines with his thumb, rhythm with his hand, and doing melodies with these fingers, and I was just like, this is my hero. Like, who is this guy? And so I got into his stuff and tried to learn his songs. You know, there weren't any tunings available online at that point, so I was like, oh, I think I hear an open string, it's a G, so I'll tune this down, and that high string, it kind of sounds like a B, so I might need to, so I was kind of doing my own tunings and trying to like hash out the stuff that he was doing, so that was really instrumental in my playing and in my life. Yeah.
Man, trying to pull that stuff off by ear is incredible. And he would sing on top of that. He'd
get
all the parts and the drums, and he would sing and pull it off all live, too.
he did a lot of singing, and I went and saw him live a couple of times, and it was, man,
it was an experience to watch him play. It was a major loss when we lost him.
Oh, I know.
That's for sure.
Sad
That's very
day.
cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So what moved you from playing classic rock or being into classic rock? Michael Hedges, and you even referenced some metal here and there along the way.
Yeah.
What drew you into the Christian side of things?
Just kind of the people I was hanging around with in college. They were involved in music ministries there at church, like playing for youth groups and stuff, and I just kind of got in with them, and they were like, hey, we need a guitar player for this Wednesday, are you available? I'm like, yeah, what are we playing? And they would show me the songs, and I was like, well, you know, a Metallica riff might not really work for that. Tender moment in this worship song, so, you know, maybe need to like adapt a little bit. And I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't really have a reference point for what Christian music or worship music was, so I just kind of tried to play what I thought might complement the song. And just started really developing relationships with people in that industry, and like just forming friendships. And I was like, I really like this, and I like this vibe, and I kind of like, and with the Crowder Band, it was like something very different and something very new, so there was a lot of space for experimentation. When he had written the songs and we would go into a studio, we had no reference for, oh, well, you have to do this dotted 8 thing that sounds like U2 or something. I didn't know any of that, so we just went in, and whatever we thought would complement the song, we went and played. So I probably just kind of started there. Being able to be creative and do your own thing was like really enticing to me. Right.
And you guys were really on the forefront, the cutting edge of really developing kind of that style or that approach to Christian music. Yeah,
it was really interesting because when it fell into David's lap to do the music portion of whatever the service was going to look like, he had a lot of friends, and the bulk of what they were listening to was like Dave Matthews Band. I mean, this was before Dave Matthews became a thing. Like, one of his friends had a tape. He's like, hey, here's this tape of this guy, what do you think? And he's like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And so Crowder showed up at my door with like a guitar and a pack of strings, and was like, show me how to do this, you know, I want to learn Dave Matthews stuff. I was like, well, okay, here's how you string it, here's the deal, you clip it here, wind it here. And so I was like, and here's kind of the voicings that he's using and the rhythm and all this. And he started to incorporate that style into a lot of the songs that he was writing. And then I came from, a different background of music that I liked. And then the drummer, he was kind of into hip hop a lot. So there was just this amalgamation of so many different styles from the different band members. And when it all came together, it was kind of like, whoa, this is not really something we've heard before. So it was a kind of a happy accident, when it happened.
Right. Interesting that you were there at that forefront, but also with Chris Tomlin, who of course has become the preeminent.
He had just started writing a lot of songs, and they started to get into churches, and he was coming up as an artist, and I was there with him. It was funny because I was traveling with him so much. I kind of like moved into the guest bedroom of his house, and like I'm gonna sublease my apartment in Waco, and I'm never there. I'm just so yeah, it was kind of fun to be on the very front end of all of that.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. So the Crowder Band, if I remember correctly, somewhere around 2010.
2012, yeah.
Or 2012, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, then basically the band part of the David Crowder Band transitioned to the digital age.
Right, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Dave had moved to Atlanta, and the band guys, we had pretty deep roots there in Waco where we were, with families, and some of the wives had jobs there. And so it didn't really make a lot of sense for us to move to Atlanta. So we're like, we still kind of feel compelled to be doing music, so why don't we form something? So 4 guys from the Crowder Band, we decided to start this new project called The Digital Age, and had a studio there, built a studio there downtown, and just kind of started filming, videos of, the church had asked us, hey, can you guys lead worship on a Sunday? And we're like, we're not sure. We haven't gotten in a circle and figured out, what we are. So we got into the tracking room of our studio, just kind of got in a circle, started hashing out songs, and that became a rehearsals EP, and just kind of our announcement to the world, hey, this is us, this is kind of what we sound like, this is what we're doing.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Right.
That's how that all started.
And were you also with the studio then, Asterisk Sound, is that correct?
Yeah, Asterisk Sound, yeah.
Were you then also producing other artists and playing with them as well?
Yeah, the first 8 months of the formation of the Digital Age, we were basically just doing music production.
Okay.
So bands from all over, we had bands all over the nation, guy from Brazil came in, and we just did production, and then reconnected with the booking agency that we had been on with Crowder Band, and he was like, hey, are you guys going to do anything? And we're like, I don't know, that's kind of a question for you. Can we do anything? He's like, yeah, let's do some stuff. And then at that point we started kind of touring around,
right.
In addition to doing the music production.
Right.
Yeah.
You guys were here, in fact, and did the
Yes.
Worship Connect conference.
Yes, we did. We did just kind of, I guess, a seminar or something about here's what we are, here's how it all works. And our drummer's a mad scientist, so he had everything. He had 20 things running through his computer. It controlled like a robot, and the lights, and all this stuff. So I don't know how his brain works, but we were here, and it was a blast.
Yeah, we sat down with him at BWAC.
Yes.
I think it was Mike or Mark. I'm sorry, I don't recall who the other.
Mark, probably the other guitar player.
Yeah, we sat down with when you guys were here. We didn't have a chance to talk with you, so I'm glad you're here.
Yeah,
you're here now. That's really cool.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about when you step into the guitar slot with an artist like Chris Tomlin. What kind of skills do you have to have in your back pocket, if you will, to be able to step into that musical seat and make it happen?
With a band like Chris, he's had his players for a while now. So Daniel, the other guitar player, he's been with him for about 17 years. So I think the idea with a new guy coming in, me, is just to kind of figure out a way to complement what's already going on there. So if Daniel is playing a part, make sure whatever I'm playing complements him and complements the song.
Right.
So just to have an awareness, I guess, of, hey, let's figure out what serves the song the best. Maybe not hey, look how skilled I am. I learned this new technical thing or whatever. That may not, fit what they're trying to do. So I think a lot of it is just being able to listen and just to hear and to, try and put in, something that would help the song.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So is it the case where him having been, Daniel's been here as well. We interviewed him
Yeah.
at Gearfest, I think, in 2016. Is it a case of where he's kind of got his parts and you're working around that? Do you guys talk about it in advance and figure it out?
Yes, we do. A lot of what he did, because he was the only guitar player, which I don't know how he did this, but it was amazing. He would do a lot of, melodic stuff, so he'd have like an open string going and playing high melody stuff. And so that kind of leaves room for, maybe a rhythm, like something, lower on the neck, kind of hold down a little bit of a rhythm guitar thing. So a lot of the songs we're doing, he has kind of the high melodic thing, and I'm just kind of adding some meat underneath what he's doing to try and fill out the sound a little bit.
Right.
But we collaborate on the songs. Like, hey, what if, you're playing pretty low here. What if I come up and I do this melody part? And it's like, oh yeah, that works. And, we'll kind of swap. If there's solo stuff happening, melody lines or anything, we kind of swap back and forth on that.
Right, right. Interesting talking to you and players in situations like that. A big part of that seems to be managing your ego and being willing to compromise and to work with someone else so you both can shine, if you will. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you approach that?
I mean, it's not really in me, I guess, to want to be downstage in the center with the spotlights on me, driving the whole ship. So I think a lot of having that kind of a personality, frees you up to step outside yourself and say, okay, the main idea here is to figure out what makes the song the best.
Right.
And so I've never really wanted that, the spotlight or the front thing. So I think that's been really helpful for me to be able to figure out how to complement the music.
Right, right. Make the whole bigger.
Yeah,
by adding to it. Right.
Definitely. And it's way more satisfying to me if I'm playing, a part that helps the song rather than like up at the front, like doing like this solo. I don't get as much satisfaction out of that as like, oh, I really enjoy this subtle melody thing that I'm doing that maybe one person in the audience is appreciating that, but
right.
I get a lot of satisfaction out of that.
Right, right. Tell us a little bit about your studio experience with the Crowder Band and also Digital Age, and how you approached going into the studio. Did you have your parts all worked out? Were you coming up with them on the spot? Are they improvised?
We did it really differently in Crowder Band because at that time, Christian musicians and artists on a label were required to go to Nashville and work with specific producers that the labels had. And so they had that whole model. But the music we were creating was coming out of Waco, Texas, and out of our community at our church there in Waco. So we told the label, we're going to stay here in Waco and do the project. And they're like, that's not how it's done. It's like, well, this is where we are and where the music is coming from, so we want to do this.
Right.
So we kind of just got thrown into it, not really knowing a whole lot. We had a friend who was an engineer in Nashville who was really good, and so he basically would drive down, get a box truck with all his gear, drive down to Waco, and we would set up in this back of Crowder's house. There was this barn, and he had gutted it out and made it a studio. Shane would bring all of his gear, set it up, and we just kind of figure out the songs. All the songs started from a demo with Dave, an acoustic, and then there were some that were built from tracks. Like a lot of the band guys were getting into Reason and Live at that time, so we'd all kind of on plane flights and stuff get on our computers and build these little tracks.
Sure.
And there was like dongles just floating around everywhere, like, here, check out this, what I did on the plane. And it's like, oh wow, that gives me an idea, I'm gonna add this to it. And so these tracks would get built, and we'd come into the studio and it's like, kind of listen to them like, yeah. And so Crowder would build a song, or if I had an idea for a song, we kind of like put the song onto those tracks. So it was a little bit different for every song. But yeah, it was a lot of process of trying to figure it out ourselves, you know, because we weren't in Nashville with the A-list producers who
Right.
knew how to do the thing. So we did a lot of it, like, probably the wrong way, but that was the only way we knew how to do it.
Sure, and
So,
clearly it worked. So.
yeah, it ended up turning out okay.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So the other aspect of that is the musical side, which you were just talking about. Tell us a little bit about the tonal approach as a guitar player that you take. Do you hear a sound in your head when you're playing a part? Does the sound inspire the part? How does that relationship work?
I typically hear a sound in my head, and then I'll chase that sound. And the engineer that we work with, you know, he's really instrumental in kind of getting the sound. So we'll experiment. We've done like different ways of miking guitar cabinets and different preamps and all that, and we just kind of, by process of elimination, figure out, okay, this is the combination that is closest to what I'm hearing in my head for that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And do you deliver to the microphone then a pretty complete sound with all the effects and everything all built in, or is that added in post-processing?
It's both. Typically, I'll run through my pedal board, which has the effects already, and then record it to tape. And if there's something missing, you know, we'll do plugins post, you know, just to kind of make the sound fit into the track. Sometimes it's dry, you know, we'll just plug in and I'll just use all plugins, and a lot of the effects and textures and melodic kind of things, I'll just do like a direct and then put all the the silly plugins on it.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so
Process
it's
that.
different. And then maybe rhythm parts, you know, that need to be pretty meaty and chunky, you know, those will just be guitar cables straight into amp and hash those out.
Right.
So it's different for everything.
Right, right. Coming from a background of being a keyboard, starting on keyboards, and you also play, if I'm not mistaken, a little banjo and some mandolin as well, right? Do all those things factor into your guitar playing?
The banjo is such a different animal. I don't think it factors into my guitar playing. It's such a, the first time I picked it up, it just kind of messed me up because, you know, you've got the highest string up this way, so every time you want to do something high, you got to go this way. So it was like trying to learn that like blew my mind, and I just figured out, okay, don't think about it musically, just, you know, figure out patterns on the banjo. So it's like, okay, if I do this roll, like 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 3 2, you know, and it was just, I think it was just a matter of learning the patterns on the banjo.
Okay.
And I don't know how that thing got thrown in my lap, but, you know, we were kind of going down the road a little bit of bluegrass. We got really inspired by bluegrass music, and I think Crowder was like, hey, we're going to do like 4 or 5 bluegrass songs, and you need to learn the banjo. And I'm like, oh, well, thanks. That's great. So I went and got a banjo, listened to a lot of Ralph Stanley and that kind of thing, and tried to hear what his guy was doing. And once again, I didn't have lessons, so I didn't know what I was doing, but I was like, okay, I can hear notes, so I'll just try to emulate those notes. And he was like, oh yeah, and oh, by the way, we're going to record at Johnny Cash's studio with Marty Stewart on mandolin. So I'm like, oh great. So here I am with the banjo. I have no idea what's going on, and I'm going to be playing next to like an icon in the in the music industry. So that motivated me to practice a lot and not be terrible on the banjo.
Right.
And it was so unorthodox what I was doing. Marty was like, hey, I like the way you're doing that. You're playing with fire. I like the way you're doing that, because he hadn't seen whatever I was doing. It had to be wrong, but when he saw it and heard it, he was like, "Hey, I can get behind that." So that was like, "Oh, thank you."
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. So I have to ask you. I heard some songs that you did in partnership with Steve 3PO.
Okay. Yeah. This is quite a dark hole we can go down here. But in the Crowder Band, we did these. Documentary kind of thing. We called them rockumentaries. The Office was kind of big at that time, and so we're like, hey, we should do kind of an Office style video thing and call it a rockumentary. And we had a buddy of ours there at Baylor who was a film student, and he would write these scripts for us, and we would all like act them out and do them kind of like rockumentary. And so one of the episodes was kind of around 2012 when the apocalypse was supposed to happen according to Mayan culture. And so the plot was that I completely became obsessed with the apocalypse, and I needed to, you know, make sure everybody knew about it. So I created a post-apocalyptic metal awareness band called Lambs of the Abyss. Lambs with a Z, of course.
Of course.
And so started writing all these like metal songs, and then BWAC programmed Steve 3PO to like do all the drum beats and stuff. And so it was just kind of a silly thing to, you know, for one of our rockumentaries. And I was like, it became like, Twitter was kind of big then, so it became like my Twitter name, my Instagram name, and everything that I have social media wise is called Lambs of the Abyss, just based on that. And we actually did like 3 or 4 songs and put them up on a Facebook band page.
Right.
And so if you go listen at your own risk, if you go down that road, I'm just going to warn.
I heard "We Three Kings," I think, was the most recent
Oh
one.
yeah,
you posted, right?
we did a Christmas song. So just listen at your own peril on those things.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Man, Jack, thanks so much for taking time to come in. I know you're headed out to sound check, and you guys got the show tonight at the embassy. So we appreciate you sitting down with us. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to meet you as well. All right. And thank you for joining me for the Sweetwater Minute. I'm Mitch Gallagher.